Welcome everybody to the Ink Panels Graphic Novel Book Club. It's been 18 months straight that we have done this. And I'm kind of surprised we've stayed on point with this because Gambit and I did it as a joke just to get through our to-be-read piles. And today it is Jennifer's pick for this month. And it is Sandman, Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes by Neil Gaiman with Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, Malcolm Jones III, with an introduction by Patrick Rothfuss, which I was freaked out when I was reading that. And so our panel today is myself, Dan, at Comic Shop News on Instagram, joined by Jennifer, Comics Will Break Your Heart, Comic Books Will Break Your Heart on Instagram. John's Comics with Kids, catch him every Thursday doing his pull list, doing the Omnibus X-Men with No Good Comics, and doing his show with his daughters every Saturday, Jen's favorite show of the week. And we're joined by Gambit at Gambit's Inc. Sid, Cartoon Sid, see her on the Dune over with us, talking about furniture and other things. And we're joined by Melkor at Smoker Buddy on Instagram.
Melchor. Sorry.
Or Melchor. I don't.
Trying to get that out.
Do you have volume or?
It's frozen. It froze right when you said.
Oh.
Ruh-roh.
So Jen, do a little introduction of the book.
So first of all, it's my favorite damn book ever. It's my favorite comic book series ever. It's by Neil Gaiman, and it's very much responsible for, hello, Kim. It's very much responsible for my love of comics. I should probably forward all my comic book bills to Neil Gaiman because it's all his fault. I would say that when me personally, not just for me personally, being affected by this book, but I would say it presented a shift in like comic book storytelling, along with some other Vertigo titles like To Me Swamp Thing and all of those. Just present me like a new era of comic books. So I love it.
John, this was your first time with the book. Some thoughts?
Oh man, just a synopsis. I don't know what you're. I was a big Vertigo fan, but I came late to that party, so I read a lot of the later stuff. I read a lot of Why the Last Man and 100 Bullets, and I never got around to this one. It always seemed like this huge universe that I just didn't feel like I was ready to tackle. But a bunch of people have been telling me over and over again, like Jennifer, that I need to read it. And so this just was the perfect opportunity to give it a try. I was surprised that it was not as my worry was that it was going to be such a huge universe that the first volume was going to be almost incomprehensible, that it was just going to be so overwhelming. But this was much easier to roll into than I was expecting.
Melchor, your thoughts on your book, your relationship with the book?
Oh man, it's one of the biggest comic books for me because I mean it introduced me to Sam Keith, which would go on to be one of my all-time favorites. Like the Max is just hands down my favorite weird comic ever. And so just by that factor, it's huge. But also it introduced me to Neil Gaiman, who has also since become one of my big influences with writing. So it's such a cool, it was so weird and cool. And at the time I found it, I had just discovered Hellboy as well. And so I always hold them very close in my heart because they're just so expansive. The worlds are so expansive. And the Sandman was really dope for that. It just introduced me to this whole world of comic books that would just become the kind of shit that I would read no matter what. It overwhelmingly became this type of stuff after the Sandman. So it changed everything.
Sid, what's your relationship with this series and book?
It's been years since I've read it, and I'm really glad that Jen picked this book. Yay, happy birthday, Jen. I'm really glad that she picked this book and that you guys invited me to participate in this because I kind of forgot how delightful it was. It's just such a joy to read. It's such a pleasure, and there's so many like fun little cameos of characters that you don't expect, and like little nods to other things. Simply delightful.
Gambit. Oh. Gambit, your
Oh
mic's
no,
not
your
on.
audio's not working.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Now I can, yes.
All right, perfect. Let's do this. I guess I'll find some headphones at some point. Anyway, so the book, I got into the book a little bit late into it. It was already finished publication when I got into it. It was on, I think, volume 10 was being published. It was recommended to me by my friend Anibal, with whom I later on went to write a publisher. He went on to write the first comic book that I published. Function. Can you hear me now?
It's good. Oh, I lied to you.
It's low.
I read the book because I was already
It's low.
with Neil Gaiman.
It worked at first, but then it stopped.
You need to read this. You need to read this now.
Your audio is low.
Again. All right, let's do this way. So my friend Anibal recommended me this book, and for the third time, let's do this again. Take 3.
The audio
can you
for
hear
some
me
reason
now?
is low. It's just low, the audio.
Sorry, I'm having audio issues.
So
Oh, no.
I'm here.
okay, you're good. You're good.
There it is. Jesus. 4th time. My friend Anibal, with whom I went to publish our first book together, kept telling me that I needed to read this book ASAP. I was familiar with Neil Gaiman already because of him, obviously, but it was something that when it was being published, I didn't pay too much attention to it, and then when I finally sat down and read it, that first volume, I was like, oh shit, why did I take so long to get into this thing? And it became one of my favorite things. He then said, hey, so you finished the first book? I was like, yes. After I read that last issue, I was hooked. So he gave me the second volume and then the third volume, and I read it all back to back, like nonstop. And it was quite an experience, and it became one of my favorite series ever.
I was late to the party on it. I think I started right around when The Wake came out after Morpheus and they were bringing Daniel in. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was really my intro to the whole Vertigo universe. And I was that kind of stubborn person. Well, nothing could be better than Alan Moore. Like, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was like poetry. Like, the way it was written, the concept. And then, like, I'm like, okay, everybody keeps talking about Swamp Thing. Every goth girl I've met known to man knows about Sandman. It's always like, hey, you really need to read this. I'll get there. So finally I got into it. I was like, damn it, like, why the hell did I wait so long? And we also, like, I can't talk about Vertigo title.
No, sorry. It keeps coming out. Sorry, keep going.
I can't talk about Vertigo without mentioning Karen Berger being the architect of Vertigo and her bringing Neil Gaiman in. Basically, Vertigo was built off the backs of Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore. And, I mean, modern comics probably wouldn't exist without Vertigo with the way they took chances.
I didn't know that.
No.
Yes, Karen Berger. They brought her in, and she was, they're like, we got all this weird shit we don't know what to do with. And she's like, okay, give me this Scottish guy, Grant Morrison. He's got some wacky shit. Let's put him on Animal Man. No one gives a fuck about that. Then The Invisibles comes out, and just Grant Morrison grows as a writer from being told, hey, do whatever the fuck you want. And you get the Grant Morrison we have today. Jen, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say, the only thing I wanted to say is I was just going to, like, I don't know if it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, is it that goth girls found Sandman, or is it like, for me, I feel like I read this in middle school when I was like an emo kid, and I like graduated into becoming a goth kid, I guess. And I feel like I saw it wasn't issue 8 of this. It wasn't the last issue where we see death, but it was I think it was the second volume. I forget which issue, where they're at the dinner party with most of the siblings, which is, further on. But I remember seeing Death and how she was dressed, and I'm like, that's how I want to look. Like, that is. So I don't know if it was like Death is responsible for creating a generation of goth girls like me, or if goth girls found like specifically Sandman and Death and all of that.
I can answer. The Death was modeled
Well, I feel
after
like
a real life person.
Cinnamon Hadley.
Yeah, so if it was based on someone that already had that look and it already had that, yeah, Sandman was inspired by real life. I would think,
Yeah. I actually so Cinnamon Hadley is who Death was based off of, and she actually died about 2 years ago. The same year that Sandman, I guess, turned 30. I turned 30 as well, along with Tank Girl. And when Cinnamon Hadley passed away, that's when I actually got my Death tattoo, kind of in honor of like that and Death and Sandman.
That's so cool.
Dave McKean accidentally, I don't know accidentally, but his drawing of Morpheus, he kind of based off Peter Murphy from Bauhaus.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. And it was kind of like, Neil's like, hey, that looks like Peter Murphy. He's like, oh, does it?
I always thought that Morpheus was modeled after Neil Gaiman.
The look,
I mean,
I really think.
I think it's just markedly British too. Like, everything is markedly British in that book. Like, Neil Gaiman's so British, and like all like how everybody looks in it is so British. So there's like even like some Cure vibes in there too. Like
a little bit.
So and it's like I came like that was my introduction to like that whole, because I grew up. My dad played like jazz and soul music, so I didn't really know what like other kinds of music were. And when I found Sandman, I was probably like 12, so it was like 1994 or something, and like it was all new to me. I was like, "What is this?" And then I made punk friends, and I was like, "Okay, that's what this is." It came before this, but now that's what it, And then as I got into high school, it totally formed. Like, I didn't dress like that, but I always had like all my friends did. So it's just like I surrounded myself with that because I didn't look like that. It's a badass look. The trench coats and the spikes and the big hair.
Yeah.
It is.
Like the big hair.
Timeless? I don't know, but good.
The first novel, would you consider this a fantasy novel or a horror novel?
No, it's a horror novel.
Horror book.
The first one is more horror, but I think it goes into more fantasy and mythology as the series goes on. There's definitely, like, to me, it's more of a fantasy book, or fantasy series, but the first one is more horror.
I think he touches various different genres in the throughout the whole series, and he explores a lot. The whole series it constantly talks about change, and and the series evolves. So I think that that is the reasoning for having different artists coming for different stories, and having so much change going on through the whole series. It's all about change.
Well, and I think this first novel or this first story seems to focus a ton on on nightmares, right? The idea of people abusing the dream powers and nightmares recur throughout. And I think it's hard to call it pure fantasy when the focus is on not just the beauty of the world, but the horror of it all.
Well, and that's with Sam Keith and Dringenberg too. Like, they really bring out that, like, Sam Keith stuff is kind of just like inherently creepy somehow, like no matter what he's doing. And that's how I found it.
The inking and the coloring in particular on Keith's work really brings like the ominous like vibe to it. It's almost like Kelly Jones, where it has that like gothic feel to it.
Todd Klein
Yes.
did. Todd Klein is awesome in this first volume too. Like, oh wait, that's the letterer. My bad. Like,
Well, the lettering's awesome too, though. Like,
yeah, combined with like Sam Key stuff when they do it around the borders and stuff, like that kind of shit is really cool.
Like the whole book is it's a team effort, and you can see it. You can see that that they work together a lot. That it doesn't feel like they were all, although they probably weren't even in the same room, but they were working together. It doesn't feel like someone sent a script to someone else and they've never communicated or they never talk about it. You know, I read the book today for the first time again in I don't know how many years, and I feel like I read it for the first time. Like I felt when I read it the first time. I saw it differently this time around, and I have a better appreciation for the art versus the first time that I read it. That was one of the things that was keeping me away. I did not like that art, that
Same
type
here.
of style. You know, I was like,
in
oh
particular,
man,
the Malcolm Jones art, I was like,
I was not a fan today. To rereading it, I was looking a lot at the art and those pages. I would love to see those original pages. You know, I'm pretty sure that they are, because something gets lost in translation between the pencil drawing of the paper to the printed comic. Something in the art gets lost. You know, and seeing those raw pages, they have to be something, you know, a different experience, because now I see them and I try to imagine how they will look in pencils, you know, in that raw stage, and I bet you that they look stupid beautiful, you know. And it's something that I couldn't appreciate 20 years ago when I read it. Now I see it and I was like, wow, this book is actually quite freaking beautiful. It's not until issue 8 I still maintain my position. It's not until issue 8. I would say that issue 8 for me would be the first issue of the Sandman series as we know it. You know, that first story arc. It was a horror story. It was something to introduce the character. It did a great job, and I'm pretty sure the only reasons we have Superman in a panel, it's because DC said you need to put Superman here, you know, so that it's all kind of connected. Because even back then, I'm pretty sure they were thinking that way. Uh, but I feel like it's issue 8 when we get, okay, so this is what Sandman is going to be from now on. This is what I'm expecting. And it was issue 8. If you ask me right at any point, what is your favorite comic, your favorite single issue, I will always say The Sound of Her Wings, issue 8 of Sandman.
well, that's funny because I was about to ask the panel, what was your favorite issue in this book?
That one.
Because for me, the issue when they're in hell.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that bit.
I think as much as I loved the stuff with his sister, there was something about the mind games and the back and forth of his trip to hell that I found particularly interesting. The fact that it wasn't the sort of graphically violent, what you would expect maybe from hell, that it was far more cerebral and psychological. And the ending to that sequence with him just sort of marching off through the masses, I thought was just, it was like part the waters for me. Like it was an amazing moment.
The dream of heaven.
Yeah, I thought it was just amazing. So for me, that was when I felt like I got a bigger understanding of what this universe was going to be like. I forgot I had read a Death, the High Cost of Living. I had read that before reading this, so I was familiar with her. And so that maybe that issue didn't have as much of an impact on me because I read it after having read The High Cost of Living. So in that way, I felt like I already knew her. I already knew like her shtick and her deal. It wasn't as like original in the moment because I already felt like I had this amazing introduction to her. Whereas the whole underworld sequence was a trip. I dug that.
Yeah.
Melchor?
I like the Cain and Abel one, like because they just they have become like particular favorite side characters of mine. So like I really like when people take familiar stories and kind of flip them around and do something kind of different with them. And that's like one of the joys of the Sandman, I think, is like how Sid said, all the cameos and stuff. Like you get to see the different takes on all these, like the mythology spans like every mythology, and it's like as if all of them existed and everything was real. So it's like the Cain and Abel one always, like, I get a kick out of their dynamic. It's just it's like poor Abel is getting
Yes.
like, but it's just like it's such a good, when well written dynamic. Like they're just, his characters are so good. Like it's delightful. I thought that actually is a really good word, despite it being a horror book.
Isn't it?
It's really delightful because there's so many ideas that are so fresh and new, and like especially for like a lot of people, for comics at the time that were growing kind of stale with whatever was going on, like that kind of like big imaginative stuff. Like, I mean, I don't know if we'd have stuff like Hickman writes, you know what I mean, like big world stuff like that without people like or Alan Moore. Like a lot of those are quirky shit, like Vertigo and Karen Berger is also responsible for Peter Milligan, who's super fucking weird. Like he's so weird, and I like buy and read everything he makes, and I don't even know if I like it all. But I read it no matter what. I know it's going to be weird as shit. Like, I'm like, okay, this is going to be weird as shit, so I have to read it. I don't know if I'm going to like it, but I read it. And actually, I like a lot of the shit. So, like, and same with Neil Gaiman. I always expect it to be kind of a certain way, very like fantastical but heavy, like delightful.
Grant Morrison for me is that where I'm just like, I know this is going to be a drug-induced fucking weird, crazy book.
But I read it anyway. I don't know
but
if I'm going to like Grant Morrison, but I read every single one of them. It's just.
Sid, what was things that stood out to you, or issue that you really loved, or a part of the issue that you loved?
Well, I agree with you. My favorite bit was definitely when he went to hell. I love how kooky and goofy all the demons look, and I love their little competition that they had, where it was like kind of a wordplay sort of thing, kind of rock, paper, scissors, like horse crushes snake, like snake eats spider. I really enjoyed that. But I wanted to comment on what Melcher said about Neil Gaiman taking these like pre-existing characters and telling their stories in different ways. I think that's something that's really common in Neil Gaiman's writing. Like, I mean, look at like American Gods and like Norse mythology. He takes these like characters that exist in like myth or in other stories, and then like retells them in his own way. And it's really entertaining and it's really fun. But I think it's also like, I don't know, I find it almost like comforting when I'm reading through like Sandman and I totally forgot that the Justice League was in this book, right? And then I turned the page and I was like, and it just like made me so happy to see characters that from other publications just like popping up in this other thing unexpectedly, and you're like, oh hell yeah, I know that dude.
And how every different race views Dream differently.
Yeah, that Mr. Miracle bit just wrecked me, dude. I totally forgot he was in this book at all.
Yeah, I forgot about it until today.
I totally forgot.
Yeah.
The Walk in Hell. The Walk in Hell issue, the part where he visits the girl, he's walking by with Etrigan the demon, and she's like, do you still love me? And he's like, I do, but I'll never forgive you.
That shit's cool. That's savage. Like, okay, that's his biggest.
That's a big relate, though.
That's his big fuckboy moment. Like, that's Morpheus's big fuckboy moment.
I don't think so.
He condemns her forever? Like, that's so fucked up. Like,
that is emo as fuck.
I don't know what she did.
I don't know if that's fuckboy.
Bitch deserves it.
Wasn't there an issue that showed what she did in the one of the later?
They go in.
I haven't finished the series, so if you guys know more,
okay, then yeah,
I'm ready to just defend Morpheus to the death.
So just like a weird little bit of information. Neil Gaiman won a Sci-Fi award for A Midsummer Night's Dream, his take on the old Shakespeare story. Within the 24 hours that he won, to the next morning, they changed the rules so a story like that could never win again. They outlawed comics from ever winning.
Comics?
I did not know that.
Yes, they changed the rules so something like that could never win again.
Really?
That is an
Yes.
unfortunate side effect.
There was Superheroes Unmasked. It was a History Channel bio that they did on comic books, and they talk about it in there. Neil Gaiman goes, from the time I got the notice that I won to the next morning, they changed the rules so no one could ever win that again who worked in comics,
Wow.
because it was
And one of-
considered lowbrow entertainment.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I feel like one of the things that Neil Gaiman brings to the table of comic books is that he gave comics that level of high writing, you know.
Literature status.
Yes, literature. Yeah, thank you. That was the word. Literatura. It's in Spanish. So I always thought that was one of the things that put me off at first too. I wasn't ready to read such complex storytelling, you know, especially in a comic book. It's like, no, this is not, you know, this is not what comics are made for. What you guys, I mean, if you guys like it, enjoy it, that's no problem. But for me, this is not what I wanted to read in comics until I read Sandman, and then it's like it shifted. You know, I thought I understood comics, and I thought I you know I understood comics and what they could bring to the table, but Sandman put it on another. It's like, wait, this is taking everything that I love and it's putting it on a higher level, and on a state that is like, okay, I want to be in this industry in that state, that the whole industry is like there. That when you say I work with comic books, people will be like, oh, there's some good shit in comic books, you know. They don't go like, you write comic books, you know. And I feel like he opened that door for other writers and other stuff. He and you know and people like Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, and I would say Vertigo would be one of the reasons why we now can appreciate this type of writing in a more mainstream in more mainstream comic books, you know.
And somebody mentioned too in the comments, they mentioned how, you know, a few things, they all predated Vertigo and then were brought into Vertigo as a title. And it was stuff like there was the Hellblazer stuff that same person also mentioned too. That's really good. Pre-Vertigo era. But then I feel like how Dan was talking about, they probably brought Karen Berger on to like bring it all together. We got these things, you know, how can we bring these together in a like a more, you know, in a kind of not narrower, but like, you know, something for okay, this is.
Can we do a toast to Karen Berger? Because I know, like, I just want to toast to Karen Berger. Like, seriously, like, to Karen Berger, who got the shit end of the stick and deserves so much more, and we wouldn't have comics without her.
Right?
I don't drink, but I have
in the 90s.
It's okay. This is just Coke. So
in the 90s, they marketed Vertigo as the anti-Image Comics. Where
I mean,
yes,
they did. It's so weird because I feel like
that's hilarious.
Yeah, I feel like they're brother and sister.
No, back then, because it was all, we don't care about writers, we're all about the artists. And Vertigo was like, hey, you could read this bullshit, or you could read this high art.
You could read Troll. Yes. You could read Troll by Rob Liefeld.
Wow.
Oh my god! Like, so addressing one of the
Troll, I can't talk shit about it.
No, I mean I read it, dude. I read it, but like it's not something I'll revisit. Like I wouldn't go back. I need to reread Troll again. No.
So addressing one of the comments, and AJ says that there are a lot of details in Preludes that not only big plot points but major themes in the whole series. Reading it today, you know, I read it this morning because I kept thinking that we were scheduled for next Sunday, and I woke up this morning and said, no, it's today. Oh my god! So yeah, that's why. So I reread it. I reread it this morning, and in doing so, but it's okay. I enjoy reading this book again this morning, and I now, you know, years later, and having read the whole thing, I'm like, oh, you know, you can see little things that you know that later are going to be to be handled or be touched or talked about in more depth. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It's just I wanted to respond to his comment.
It's interesting you bring that up. Are there books that, as you've gotten older as a person, that you've gone back and reread and it just changed your interpretation of it completely?
Yes.
Comics or specifically?
Comics, graphic novels, something that you read, maybe you were too early, like you weren't meant to read at that time.
Yeah, I mean, like Watchmen. Like I read Watchmen as like around the same time I probably read Sandman. I think it was like 1994. I was like a 12-year-old kid. I kind of had like some idea of like these headier concepts, but not enough to really grasp like the gravity of them. Like, and upon rereading Watchmen, like as a young adult in my 20s, I was like, oh shit. And it totally shifted. But
as the world changes, you notice more things, or things start like hitting you closer, because like when we had Steve Orlando on, we were talking about Watchmen. He goes, yeah, except when a little kid died in that movie, shit stopped. And in that book, but in real life, no, it just keeps going. The violence won't stop.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely that's like one I could think of.
I feel like whenever we do book club for the month, and it's a like, you know, for instance, maybe like I remember one of the last picks for me was Monstrous, and like thinking about that there, like I think Gambit, you didn't necessarily love the read of Monstrous. Did anyone like not like this book? This, like, because I know like John, like you just read this book for the first time, but everyone else has like read it before. Normally I feel like whenever we do these, and especially with a large group, there should be like one or two people statistically who were like, I just didn't like the book.
Mars didn't like it so much she didn't come on. No, she messaged me an hour before.
Oh, I didn't get a message from. Well, anyways, so like John, did you not like the book, or was there anything that you were like, I don't understand the hype, or was it like, no, I totally get the hype on this book?
I think it definitely lived up to the hype in most regards. I will say I am not a Hellblazer fan, and I like John Constantine as like a side character. I think he's great in like small doses, and I think one of the things that kept me from reading this beforehand was I have tried several times to get into Hellblazer, reading different volumes, and I've generally hated it every time I've read it. And I was worried this would be a lot like that. And I will say there are moments in this first volume where it gets really close to feeling like another Hellblazer issue. But thankfully it gets right to the line and then it goes away and goes off to something better. So I don't have any major complaints or anything. Once you finish East of West, we're going to get you on Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, because you'll get an appreciation for John Constantine in that. They're like Abbott and Costello in those books. Like
this is my intro. This was my introduction to John Constantine. This book, by the way.
I mean, I've enjoyed him in Batman Damned or whatever. When he's thrown in as like a side character, I generally enjoy him. But when the whole book is about him, it's just like it feels such a like just depressing waste of time. I'm just
I like him because he's sad, but he's always trying to fuck.
Wait, there were things in the Batman Damned besides Batman's cock?
Yeah. There were actually two. There was actually two more issues.
I can't let this come up and not mention this. Constantine fucked King Shark.
Wait, what?
All right, carry on.
Wait, whoa, hold on. When did that happen?
Oh my God, it was in one of those DC cartoons.
Yes.
Kevin knows what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Yeah.
A really quick detail where John Constantine shows up on the scene with someone else, and like they say something about King Shark, and he's like, "Oh, can't go over there. That's my ex." And King Shark, John Constantine, and is like,
"No." So how the scene plays out is on the movie Justice League Apocalypse War. How the scene plays out is there's a bunch of villains. It's an underground thing happening, and there's a bunch of villains with this what's left of the superheroes, and Constantine is with talking to I don't know whoever he was talking to, and he goes like, "Oh, there's my ex," and it's Lois Lane, and she goes like, "What? Harley Quinn? Oh my God, I would never!" And he was like, "No, are you crazy? Not Harley." and he just looks at King Shark, and King Shark just winks at him like, "Hey!" I was like, "Oh."
That's what I'm saying. Constantine is a player.
Completely unexpected.
He is.
He gets fucked over for being a player all the time. So it's like it's you can also like love hate him. You know, you could watch him fuck and be like, yeah, but then know he's gonna get screwed over for being a dick to somebody.
I mean, he's playing the game.
He has. Did you know that John Constantine has a Swamp Thing tattoo on his butt?
Does he?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love this character.
When Swamp Thing took over John Constantine's body so he could have sex with
Impregnate
his girlfriend.
Abby.
He went and got like a little tree he got a little like tree tattoo on his ass. Yeah.
So show of hands, who's gonna get this tattoo with me? Yes.
Are we doing Descender first?
I mean, this is happening.
I thought Gambit was tattooing Descender on us first.
I mean, I'm down for all of that. So
hours in the day, buddy.
So that we can do.
Was there a particular issue that dragged for you, or a story in here that dragged? Because for me, the Dr. D Destiny one it was maybe an issue too long.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I did kind of feel that way this time around reading it. I think I definitely didn't feel that way the first time I read it, and maybe it's just because I knew how it ended, and I was like, come on, fucker, like, stop it with the ruby, you know?
Yeah, I feel similar. The first time around it was chill. Like, the first time around it, I don't think it felt slow. Though sometimes there's some big shit that when you know it's going to happen, like it just it can drag on a little bit.
It hit some Smeagol shit there with the ruby. My precious. My precious.
Yeah.
That's actually how it felt.
They also mention it as precious earlier in the book too.
I didn't even notice that. Oh god.
There's like a Lord of the Rings thing going on already.
There's so many things like that in this book. Oh, there were a couple that I like mentally noted that I wanted to mention that I thought were like fun little like references that one might get if you had read something else, and now I can't remember any of them.
Oh, don't you hate that? I make notes because of that this morning.
I should have, but my hubris, I was like, oh, how could I forget this?
One of mine was what we just talked about, and I had forgotten about it until somebody else mentioned it.
Maybe I'll get my come around then.
Yeah.
Hey, Jen, I don't know if you should be scared. Rodney Barnes liked our post about the show. About our Sandman show. Rodney Barnes liked our post. I was like, uh-oh. Actually, he collects all this stuff. Didn't he say he
on too? I mean,
so the writer of Philadelphia.
I mean, he's done like stuff with Neil Gaiman, and
he's a co-writer on American Gods, and we had him on for Philadelphia talking about it. And he just liked my post about the show, and I forgot he said he had almost every Vertigo book graded.
Yeah. The Swamp Thing series. He has it. The whole Swamp Thing series by Alan Moore.
Yeah,
he mentioned he had it all graded. Yeah, that's insane. That's insane.
Dan, you fucked up and didn't invite him. Is what you're saying?
Listen, after what he did to Andrew last show, like I got to be real careful. He spent an hour and a half just ripping on one of our panelists.
You know. That's I have nothing.
Got the moxie.
Awesome
I have something interesting to say about this book, though.
Yes.
One of the back to Preludes and Nocturnes. One of the NPCs of the book. You know, they talk about the lady that she gets raped and she gives birth to a baby. You know, and they talk about this dude in I think he's in Haiti that his dream the guy that dreams about the castle of in the clouds. So he gives him a name, and his name it says Bustamonte, and that sounds so made up. I had to look up to see if that last name was
Yeah.
made up, right? So I learned today that there's a very, very interesting case, uh, something versus Bustamante or something like that. Anyway, which argues that if you get stopped by a cop, does he have to tell you that you can refuse to get a search without a warrant of your car?
Huh.
You know, right? So the answer is no. The cop doesn't have to tell you that you can that you have the right to refuse a search on your car without a warrant. So if someone stops you, so one day a cop stops you and they say, can I search your car? You can legally say, you have the right to say, no, you cannot search my car without a warrant. And it was a case with that name that I learned that today because of the name that I thought it was made up on the by Neil Gaiman. It
I'm glad
happens
you
that it
learned
wasn't
that,
made up,
Kevin.
right?
That's important knowledge for you to have in the world.
I learned that too. I was today years old.
So you can say no. You can say no. And if he doesn't tell you, and he's not. Oh, but sorry. The argument was that the officer is not required. It's not required to tell you that you have the right to say no.
Of course.
So if you don't know that you can say no, that's your problem. I don't have to let you know that you can say no.
I knew that, but I kind of always operated under the default that they would just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like I would be like, no, you can't search my car, and then they'd be like, get out of the car, get out of the fucking car, or something crazy, and then I would just have to do it because
Yeah. So I learned that today, thanks to Neil Gaiman and Sandman.
I have a question about issue 8. Is Franklin a fuckboy?
We don't know.
He's trying to get with Death, and he's like, "Hey, I'll see you later." She's like, "Yeah, actually, you will."
We don't know. We don't have grounds to call him a fuckboy. He could be a himbo for all we know.
That is true.
Oh, this feels like an hour discussion of himbos versus fuckboys.
We don't have enough information yet.
I got to come back with my whiteboard if we're going to go there. So
This is right up with our Dune characters, X-Men. Who's who?
One thing I did notice.
I forgot to make my spreadsheet.
I did too. We got 2 weeks.
One thing I did notice on reading it again as an older person too is like older person. I'm so old. Older person is like you can definitely tell where Dringenberg picked up Sam Keith's slack. Like, Sam Keith, for as great as he is just like notably kind of a lagger on his stuff, and like, and that's cool. Like I respect it because he's a weird dude. Like, and so I can just imagine like how the shit's going on up here. But so you can definitely tell, like as I became more familiar with each of their work, like I can tell what stuff is Sam Keith and what stuff is Dringenberg. Like
that's interesting. To me, the art. To me, the art gives me that feel of independent comic book that came out, and the artist is not a bad artist, but he still has a lot of ground to cover in order to become a very good comic book artist. Although now that I see it as a more older person, I do appreciate the art on the book more now than I did back then. But it still gave me that very early, creepy, eerie comic book feel, which I'm pretty sure that was the whole purpose. That was on purpose, that they got this artist to work on this book because that's the look they were looking for. To me, it gave me like when I read Poison Elves at first, you can spot all the mistakes on the perspective and all the proportions that are off and a bunch of other things that you go like, oh my God, I've been my whole life trying to perfect my craft to a point where people see it and don't find the flaw. And a lot of these published artists, have a shit ton of them, and The point is that I put a lot of pressure on myself, and then I see things like this, and it puts me off and it irritates me. But at the same time, I actually can appreciate it for what it is, because it's not it from a certain point of view. You know, if you want to be a snob like I'm being, yeah, it has some horrible stuff going on. But if you sit down and you look at it and you pay attention to what you're looking at and what they're trying to express, it has everything that you need to read the image well. So it works. If it works, it's good. You know, it's good art. And now I understand that. Back then, I was like, "Oh, this book is horrible. This is who reads this thing?" You know, and it always put me off. And now I see it today. I read it, and I was like, "Oh, well, this is a completely different thing."
Do you know? Are you familiar with Sam Keith's the Marvel
Yes.
Presents covers? The
Yes.
The Wolverine shit. That was like
Yes.
part of why I
Oh.
like those too. Like,
That was another thing. When back then I was like, this is not Sam Keith. This is not how, you know, the Sam Keith that I know. This is not the art that I remember. But now you can see certain things and you're like, oh yeah, I can see that. I can see how that turned into the other, you know. And it reading it today, I saw it with a completely new set of eyes, you know, and it's as good as it was 20 years ago. You know, it's I think it's even better now that I'm older.
33 years old now.
Well, for me it was 20 years ago. David is what, 19 years old now? Yeah, so it was 20 years ago because I read it when David was still a baby.
What's interesting is seeing how much they were breaking back then the 9-panel grid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which
Sam
probably
Keith-
drove editors crazy.
Sam Keith was awesome for that too. He does that a lot in the Max and shit too. Like, does these weird panel shapes too, like a shape all down the whole page, but like just the middle, and then there's just like black space on the side.
J.H. Williams is famous for destroying the 9-panel grid.
J.H. Williams is dope.
The
And I
panel
feel-
is dope though.
Yes.
And I feel like we wouldn't get in mainstream comic books art like that if it wasn't for books like Sandman and those Vertigo books, which I feel like they thought that Vertigo was not going to be a success, and they were like, okay, so we have this weird shit, try to find and do something with all this, right? And they were like, okay, so I'm going to put this together, let's see if it works. And suddenly it was working. And suddenly we were getting these amazing things, and we're like, "Oh, shit, we got something here," you know. And when you have at the same time a company like Image that was so focused on giving you this shiny chrome product of
With no
art,
substance.
you know, because that you cannot hide the sun with your hand. It's an expression you cannot, you know. One thing that Image had is that those books were beautiful. You know, they broke ground with digital coloring and a bunch of stuff, and they would put out amazing looking books. But 80%, 90%, 95% of those books were empty. Versus you get this book from Vertigo that may look a little bit rough around the edges. No, they don't look rough. They are definitely rough around the edges. Visually, when you read them, those things that would put you off that book, when you're reading it suddenly don't exist, and the art fits perfectly with what you're reading. And I noticed that with a lot of Vertigo stuff, that when you're reading it, like suddenly that thing that you thought that was bad art, that was horrible, that would put you off, suddenly like it takes a whole different life and a whole different thing.
And for me, like I was on a show not too long ago trying to defend Eduardo Rizzo's 100 Bullets artwork to people that thought it just looked cheap and like crap. And I feel like to your point, Gambit, what I love is the fact that these books fit their stories so beautifully. And how could you tell a story about nightmares and dreams and keep it in a 9-panel grid that's all straight?
No way.
Has to bend and warp and manipulate because time, space, and reality are all being shuffled in different ways. And with 100 Bullets, you have past, present, and future, and trauma, and all these things kind of warping in that story. And and you look at Fables, and you have reality and fantasy all blended together. And these artists, I think, do a really great job of not giving you the norm, because if they gave you that shiny image product, it would seem fake, because it doesn't fit this truth that we're being presented.
It's a really good point.
Grant Morrison
And now
on
I
his
feel like I
Doom
look-
Scroll took Rob Liefeld to task in it, and he just kept having, he had Doom Squad or whatever, and he kept having like all these new characters pop up with TM trademark pop up, like completely pouches out the ass. Like he literally just like went after him in that issue.
And now I feel like I look at that image from that time and I'm like, eh. But I look at this and it may not have been like quality, and I'm like, this is still beautiful. Like this artwork completely holds up. But then I look at that image stuff and I'm like, did they really need that many pockets and pouches? Like, come on, guys.
Pointy
It's okay.
feet.
Draw
It's
feet?
okay.
Like,
The pointy feet.
So one of it's no surprise that one of the books that is still going on is the Spawn title, and I would have to say that the reason Spawn took took the life it took and went the route it went is because those first few issues we had Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, Frank Miller working, Grant Morrison. We have all these amazing artists putting lore into this new character. I can guarantee you that that book wouldn't be where it's at right now if we wouldn't have had those amazing writers, because Image, as good as many good books as they have given us, they have given us an equally shitty amount.
Well, McFarlane stayed involved too. He didn't just walk away like some of the other
That
guys
is true. That is true. That is true.
And I think he also tried to do more of the unconventional with those first few Spawn issues.
Yes.
Out of all of the contemporaries there, he had some experience from what they let him do on Spider-Man, which was hard to reread.
Savage Dragon's 250 issues in now. Like, it's insane. And Eric Larson hasn't missed an issue.
But I think those are the only two characters that you can say that they are the closest to an original completely original character from all that generation of Image books. I think those are the two characters that you can say these are the closest to a fully complete, because if you read Wildcats, that's X-Men. If you read Youngblood, that's X-Force. If you read Wetworks, that's X-Factor. That's different. I mean, I'm just throwing comparisons, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. In fact, there's a character. There was a character in Image called Blood Wolf, Beowulf, something like that. That it was a clear ripoff of what Lobo is, which we know that Lobo is just a parody of that extreme violent character that they made famous, but that's not the point. Anyway, so we got from Image a shit ton of things that were just, this is more of that.
They're new Vertigo now. They're really new Vertigo. I also want to say, like, if it wasn't for books like Sandman, we never would have gotten Preacher, which is near and dear to Sid, Gambit, and I. Where that's a book, when later I read it in life, I realized someone's actually the real villain of the book.
Don't get me started. Sometime.
An Irish vampire might be the real villain.
Yes, I
do that this time.
Those are the books that we wouldn't, like I said earlier, we wouldn't have gotten things like that that are now part of our mainstream comic book monthly if we wouldn't have books like Sandman and lines like Vertigo.
Well, you're a huge Jason Aaron fan, and you wouldn't have gotten was it Scalped? I think by him.
I haven't read Scalped, but I wouldn't have gotten oh my god, I forgot the name of that book, and it's the story of Cain and Abel. We wouldn't have gotten that. I wouldn't have gotten that book. It's Goddamn, I think it's called.
Oh, The Goddamned.
Yes, and that's a beautiful book. And we wouldn't have gotten that if we wouldn't have books and lines like Vertigo at the time. Which at the time I was like, it's not flashy, colorful.
Also, I wanted to not forget to touch on Dave McKeon's covers.
Oh yeah.
Like, and the whole multimedia aspect, and like when I learned how he did it, and like how he took the picture of the painting with the shelves on the side, and how it was all this like huge few foot tall whole structure, and that's like it was insane. And so like to re-look at the covers, knowing that, like I have the collection that's just the covers, it's called best covers.
Yeah.
I find them haunting.
Yes.
Yes.
Like the best way though.
Like disturbing.
This is my favorite of this first one.
Yeah.
His Arkham Asylum book.
Oh
is
yeah.
freaking
Grant
amazing.
Morrison.
I got them to talk to me on Twitter once because Dave McKeon did a backup story in this Mr. X book that I was rereading Mr. X a few years ago, maybe like 10 years ago. Also a weird book. Dean Motter is the guy who did that one. And Dave McKeon has a backup story in it, and in it there's a character that looks very much like Neil Gaiman. So I took a picture of it and I tweeted at them, and I was like, "Hey, this character," and I feel like the character's name was Neil or something. I was like, "This looks like a Neil that I know," and I tweeted that at Dave McKeon, and Neil Gaiman responded and he said, "Nope, that was some other Neil that Dave went to art school with." Dave McKeon responded, "Yep, definitely not Neil Gaiman." And that was just like my brief interaction with them, but it was just wonderful and made me like them both even more.
I kind of wonder if Neil Gaiman knew that a universe was going to spin out of this book that is so like widespread between all his characters. Like Lucifer got a freaking show.
He must have had the seeds in his head for all of it. Like, but so many writers have also done great stuff like with it in the recent years. Even like I've been enjoying all the Sandman universe stuff, and then like people like I got turned on to Mike Carey through his stuff with the Sandman characters, and I love Mike Carey. So like I think a lot of the mythos there, the seeds were planted, but other people have also made some good shit happen in the universe.
Yeah, I think Mike Carey did Hellblazer for quite a while as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know
Mike
Warren
Carey-
Ellis had a run.
Warren out, yeah. Markedly British.
I've really been loving a lot of the Sandman universe like spin-offs, like not just Lucifer, but right now the Dreaming is one of my favorite series going on right now, where they're basically the main character is trying to like get her baby back, but she has her baby back. But she
Baby
has
back, baby
to
back,
figure
baby
out like in the world that she's in, she has to figure out like who the real Shakespeare is. So it goes a lot. Like I love how like not only does it play with like mythology in general, but history too. And throughout the whole Sandman series, there's lots of little, especially with death kind of hopping through history, which like I love that play with this interwoven like huge mythologies that are almost universal depending on what culture that you're in, but then going into like British history as well, and like little histories here and there. I also really like, I haven't read Norse Mythology, the book by Neil Gaiman, but the series Norse Mythology that he's doing coming out in like single issue format with P. Craig Russell. I've been reading it and it brings me right back into like the Sandman universe, and which I didn't think would happen other than reading Sandman books.
Yeah,
It's
that
incredible.
Mr.
The Norse mythology novel.
I haven't read it yet.
I haven't read any of the comics.
Is the comics based on that novel? It's like an adaptation of the
I think
novel.
so, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
P. Craig Russell
far as
does a
I
lot
know,
of the adaptations.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
P. Craig Russell is good with No Game and stuff too. He does a lot of the.
And then David Mack is doing the covers too.
Is it super trippy, or am I thinking of something else?
I mean,
Like, I mean,
I'm
the
almost positive
art
it's the same
in
thing.
the Norse mythology comic. No.
I have not read.
I haven't read it, so I don't know.
What about it?
Is it trippy?
Yeah. Is it? Would you describe it as trippy?
No, it's
Is
pretty
Tradmore
P. Craig
doing the
Russell.
art?
What the fuck am I
Is
thinking
it,
of?
or I thought it was P. Craig Russell
P. Craig Russell
doing the artwork
yes.
for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
the first time I was
So
introduced
it-
to to him was to be Craig Russell was in Sandman. And Sandman opened the doors for
Yeah.
me to a lot of interesting new artists and way of
Pretty
doing
basic.
things that I never thought possible. You know, it's like I said earlier, this series, when I finished reading this thing, I learned that comic books could be so much more than they are. You know, and that and we have that now. There's a lot of books out there right now that are way more than just red, yellow, and blue characters. You know, punching.
Give me Frank Quietly in that big ass chin.
Right.
Also in theme, just in theme too, like the stuff it was tackling in theme was really different for me too at the time, like than what I was reading as far as superhero shit or whatever. Like just to see headier themes and stuff like that would lead me to, you know, through those kind of comics, I got led into other literature that was like that, and through the themes of like history and memory and time that like the Sandman deals with, I got into people like Haruki Murakami and like other kind of people in literature who deal with those kinds of things.
Murakami's awesome. Oh.
Yeah, just based through a human lens. You know, they get into these really big, fantastical ideas, but it's always through this grounded human lens of these characters who are very much flawed human people. And even Morpheus himself, you know, like through his flaws finds how he's more and more human through the series. So it's like I just like just that kind of shit going on was like really big for me reading the Sandman. Like, and even now, like even rereading it, I'm seeing like more, like every time I go back to it, I'm just like, oh, there's more shit than I even realized was in here. It's such a heavy book, like dense with ideas and dense with themes.
I really dislike Murakami's books, actually. I find them I find them like painfully mundane, like way too rooted in reality for me to be able to get the escapism that I'm looking for with reading.
I like the Wind Up Bird Chronicles.
Not the way I feel. So the Wind Up Bird is maybe an exception. That's the short story one, right?
No, the Wind Up Bird Chronicles is like a big one. The short story one, there's one called The Elephant Vanishes.
One.
The Elephant Vanishes, yeah, those are good.
Yeah, so I would say that that's kind of an exception. I did enjoy some of the stories in that, but trying to read through his novels, like I've never actually made it through one because I feel like painfully stuck in reality. Like, for example, I was reading Norwegian Wood, and they're talking about changing on these fucking Tokyo train lines that like I have suffered on through like my time living and working in Tokyo, and I was just like, I cannot continue reading this book because this is painful for me. Like, I don't want to be on the trains.
Like Thomas Pynchon is the most painful writer I've read. Like, he just doesn't know when to fucking like knock his word count down. Like, I don't know if he's paid by the word, but like literally I sat there, I was like, bro, like you just used 50 words to explain one thing. You just knock it down to like half.
I think that's how I felt like about Dune before I got into Dune. Like I was telling you, those first 100 pages when I felt insulted by the book.
That was before we found the furniture in the story. John, you got to read that book. Like,
can we just say, why did we even talk about chair dogs?
Don't.
You at 2 a.m. texting.
It wasn't 2. It was like 9. It was like 9:30 my time, and I'm like, is it too late to text them about chair dogs? Nah.
I pictured this as you just like being in the middle of dinner or like reading, and then you just had like a waking nightmare of like chair dogs. And you had to just drag us down into that hell with you. I didn't need to be reminded about chair dogs.
Thank you, Gravity's Rainbow can fucking suck it. I hate that fucking book. I hate Mason Dixon. Fuck both those books. Actually, fuck Thomas Pynchon. He is the Tom King of literature.
Oh my God.
I'm not a Thomas Pynchon fan. I wouldn't say.
Thank you for your support in this difficult time. Referencing Dune every time I talk about anything.
Is it because the movie this was supposed to come out? Is that
it was supposed to come out the other day?
Is that a sore subject?
For Jen, yes, she shed her water.
Are we avoiding that right now?
I can't avoid
it. If you want more Dune conversation.
What?
Wonder Woman 84 on HBO Max on Christmas Day. And guess who has nothing to do on Christmas Day? This guy.
What's on HBO Max?
Wonder Woman 84.
Oh
They're
yeah,
not
and
releasing
Christmas.
in theaters and in HBO Max. So if you're moved in by then, I will have that. You can watch that.
You know, I actually finagled myself an HBO Max login. Finessed it.
I find ways to watch stuff. I know people
Yeah.
on the internet.
I'd say we're all pretty positive on this book.
On what book? On Preludes and
for
Nocturnes?
Sandman Volume 1.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you guys are not, I
Even though
don't
this
know
one
what to tell you.
obviously-
I have no notes. Like,
Well, here's what I have to say. Obviously, I love this book. Like, I have such fond memories of it. But going back and reading the issue 24 Hours, there's a couple of like points of contention that I have with it. Like, for instance, it does feature queer characters, but there's one moment with this with the lesbian character, and I can't recall her name, but I feel like they didn't do her justice the way that they should have.
yeah,
He's
she
come out
gets
after
further down the
fact.
line, there's
get, like,
like
punched
you know,
in the face as part of that. You know,
Yeah.
the crazy
Yeah.
shit that's happening.
Because I know after the fact, he kind of came out saying he misrepresented
mhm.
some characters in there that he kind of regrets.
That's good.
I mean, but the we have to
100%,
see.
yeah.
I noticed that too, and I see this as a book that was written in a very different time and mind frame that we are right now. That's one of those things that we now see differently, but the most important thing is him saying, okay, I think I did a bad job with these characters, and move on and fix that for in the future. Okay, so next time I know in the future I need to not do these things. These are the things that I learned from, and that's very important. That shows a lot of maturity of him as a person, as already. But I never doubt something like that. I would never doubt in a million years think that Gaiman would do something and not realize what he did, and not be like, oh shit, my bad, I'll fix it next time.
In particular, it was about trans characters that he felt he misrepresented, and at the time, like, I don't think it was very common in '88. I mean, I might be wrong, but
yeah, we forget that this book was published in 1988, and even if it was a common thing back then, we didn't talk about these things like we do now.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't mainstream.
And our understanding of these things was a completely different thing than what we know and we have learned now. So I always try to, when I'm reading a book that's been written a while back, I try to put that, to have that in my head, that okay, so this was written in this time, so there's chances are that or even with a movie that we're going to encounter something that now we think like, we shouldn't be talking about this thing right now, or we shouldn't talk that way, or no, we don't use that word anymore. But I kind of give it a pass at that point, because it's, like I said, it's from another time. It's the Neil Gaiman that writes right now, and it's not the same Neil Gaiman that wrote this book. We have a completely different person right now.
And I mean, the 90s was a fucking pretty just like generally insensitive time too. Like the early 90s.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. I see shows now that I used to like when I was during that time, that I see them now and I go like, man, how did I find this thing funny? It's like I don't find it funny anymore.
Oh man. And like he was probably, he probably had to kind of like, there were a lot of eggshells there too. And he was also a young dude, a young straight cis male. So like, and it's not like, I wouldn't say I give it a pass. Like, I mean, you have to view it in context because it's already made and it's already been a thing. So it's like, but I think it's kind of funny. Like I've been going through and rereading some shit from like the early 90s lately. And man, the the way they deal with like gender and sexuality and just like even cis hetero relationships, like Peter Parker and Mary Jane in fucking Spider-Man is like the most laughably hilarious relationship I've ever fucking seen. Like,
do you remember North Star when they outed him in Alpha Flight? That was like a huge fucking deal where like speculators were buying it up, and it was kind of like, I don't know, whatever. Like North Star, who cares about? Like Midnighter and Apollo being gay was a way bigger deal for me in Authority.
Yeah, they had to temper it or something. Like they still kind of temper it. I feel like they there was that wedding. You know, they had the first gay wedding.
Yeah,
and it was just like, yeah, okay, where have you been? Like, but,
right? Yeah, like.
But
Steve Orlando is going to make a perfect one eventually.
Yeah.
Like that dude was like the best person you could have talked to about stuff like this. Like he's also all about ass eating apparently. And he's bringing it back.
John, I want to ask you because you've been of all of us, you've been awfully quiet. I as a first time reader, I gave you this book to read. You read it, you finish it, and someone says to you right now, "Say, hey, I'm looking to read I'm looking to get into comic books. Would you recommend this book to someone?"
I don't think anything like this is a good like first time I've never read a comic book kind of thing, because I think it demands an understanding of the form to really appreciate it, you know.
Totally.
And that, because I have a few friends that are like, oh, I want to introduce my wife to comic books or my husband to comic books, and they've never read anything. And I'm always like, do Why the Last Man first, like go that route. It's a straightforward story, but it's like it's also like wonderfully odd and quirky and hilarious. And then I think but not if it's just that first volume, right? That they read they read that first trade, and if they like the experience, they understand the format, they understand the style, they can understand that each book can be its own universe and it can be its own thing. I think you got to earn something like this. It's like you wouldn't give a third grader Shakespeare. You want them to like work their way to something like that.
Like a literature reader who doesn't know comics but like reads novels constantly, I might introduce this to first. This is your intro drug. Like it's enough to like kind of hit you in the cerebral part where you're like, oh, this isn't just dumb fucking like beat 'em up shit.
Yeah.
I would still
even just whatever for
Fables is awesome. Like, unfortunately,
as like an intro to comics.
Someone watched Once Upon a Time and was like, "Oh, they stole from Once Upon." Hold up. Let me explain this.
Real quick.
You're about to learn today.
ABC was pitched Fables, and then they were like, "Oh, fuck that. We could do this ourselves. This is all fucking stuff we could just steal from constantly because there's no what's the word for it?
Property rights.
Yeah, there's no copyrights on it, so we could just use these characters, just except for Pinocchio. I think Disney owns them.
Dastardly.
Yes. So, if you were going to have someone come to you like, I like Sandman, what book would you recommend to them? Jen, I'll start with you.
Try to figure out. Okay. I would probably try to say like, I think that you made a really good point when you said that someone has to earn Sandman. Like you're right. I think that this may not be a good intro to comic books, but I think that it's one of those classic reads where anyone who enjoys any type of genre should be able to find something in Sandman, because there's a pinch of horror, there's a pinch of history, there's a pinch of fantasy, there's a pinch of science fiction in it. And especially if they do know stories like Batman and Justice League, you'll see those characters in here too. So I think that it's not necessarily a good intro, but it is a good recommendation for someone who wants to read the classics of comic books in something that's still accessible. I would say that, and maybe it's just me, based on my personal preference, is that if you like something like this, I would probably hands down recommend Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. I would probably also recommend Saga, just the way that Saga defies that genre of, is it fantasy, is it science fiction, what is it? Is it romance? What exactly is this story? So I'd probably pitch Saga as well. And maybe that's just because when I think of my favorite stories, I think Sandman is what got me into comic books, and Saga is like what kept me there and kept going. I would probably start with those. Maybe even, I've been thinking a lot about the comics that got me into comic books, like the graphic novels, and Kabuki by David Mack is another one of those. And Fables, just as a Vertigo title. Preacher, I think of a lot of those around the same time that I got into comic books. Those were recommended to me by my high school
Comic book
photography
mentor.
teacher. So that's why, yeah, 100%. If it wasn't for my photography high school teacher, I wouldn't be into comic books the way that I am now. So I really appreciate that. And those were all the books that he recommended to me. Fables, Why the Last Man, Kabuki, Sandman. So those would be the
Those
ones
are
that I'd
super
recommend.
good recs. That guy did a good job.
Those, and it's been 100%. Like, Mr. Vina, Eric, are you watching? Like,
Nailed it.
John?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to veer away from Vertigo. I think Jennifer mentioned, like, yeah, Why the Last Man, 100 Bullets. I mean, it's hard to veer away from that incredible world and all those, you know, Transmetropolitan or whatever, like all those wonderful worlds. If I was going to break free from that, I think maybe something like Strangers in Paradise might be something that the same reader might appreciate. But obviously, one far more reality and one far more fantasy. But like at the same time, I think there's a through line of character that would be appreciated.
Gambit?
Me, funny thing, when I met Rebecca and she moved with me to Puerto Rico, we were talking about comic books and all that. I said, you want to read something? I can recommend something for you to read. And she said, yeah, sure. What do you recommend? So I gave her Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes. I told her, all right, so the art might be a little bit rough around the edges, but just finish all the way to the end, and then you tell me what's up. And she, after that, I had to get the other trades because she needed to read them. And if I have to recommend this book to someone, if I were to recommend a book to someone that has never read a comic book before, if it's someone that reads novels and reads a lot, Sandman is a good book to give them to start with, because it's very similar to the way of storytelling of a novel. You know, it's something that they will appreciate better if it's someone that's already into novels and all that. If it's someone that's never been into comic books and doesn't read at all and just wants to read a comic book, I would say something more mainstream, like maybe, I don't know, whatever comes to mind at the point, like Batman Hush or The Long Halloween or Maximum Carnage. You know, if you want to read that. Those are easy reads. I'm not saying they're bad reads. I'm not saying I'm not trying to compare those to Sandman. It's giving you an example. If I have to read, someone who read Sandman says to me, "Hey, what else do you recommend?" I would go with Saga immediately, honestly, because it's a little bit more colorful, and it's a little bit more
romantic.
Yes. So I think it's a nice balance to, if you just finish reading Sandman, something like Saga would be a nice balance. And then after that, it would be stuff like From Hell, Swamp Thing, the Alan Moore stuff, Promethea, and I would in that case, in when it comes to that, I usually go straight to the author instead of a book. I said, hey, you like something by Neil Gaiman? Well, here's a list of things that Neil Gaiman wrote. Here's a list of things that similar writers to Neil Gaiman or contemporaries of Neil Gaiman wrote, and here's a list, and this is artists that work in this book that you might find interesting in other books. At that point, I the way I would recommend something to someone is it changes based on who I'm talking to, honestly. But I always recommend Sandman to everyone I talk about comic books, even if they never read comic books. I say, read whatever you want to read, just make sure that it's a volume 1 that you get. But if you want something serious and something that would put your head in a different state, go get Sandman. Usually works out.
Glitter and Duct Tape, like, seriously, read it all. Like, it's not a long series. Get the trades.
Yeah, it's not that long series. It's not
It's
just
not a
10,
long series, just 12.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
is that counting
Well,
the J.H. Williams what was that last series that came out? I can't remember.
Overture. The original series is just
Like
10 trades.
Overture and yeah.
Just
and
the original series is 10 volumes. Then we have The High Cost of Living, and then we have Overture, and then we have the other one that it's an oversized book. Endless Nights. Yeah.
And then there's 2 death books too, right? There's High Cost of Living and
Yeah.
Sid, what would your recommendations be?
I have 2 answers to this question. Jen's going to hate my first one. I'm so sorry. But I can easily see someone enjoying Sandman, someone who enjoyed Sandman enjoying Lock and Key. Here is my defense of that. It is fantasy. It is horror. It is a sort of sprawling story that is also contained within
Family
a
drama.
small group of people in a small space, but is like overall a big story. So I think there's definitely similarities there.
Yes.
Yeah, and a family drama. Good point. My second answer, though, is I agree with Jen that shifting to Alan Moore might be a good idea for someone who enjoys Sandman. I would probably go with recommending League of Extraordinary Gentlemen because it has that same aspect of like historical or otherwise like literary characters made into a new story. So if that's what you're kind of digging about Gaiman's work, you might dig that about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, perhaps. And then maybe that'll lead you down the road to Alan Moore, and you can have your emo Alan Moore phase that we've all had.
Yeah. Did he end
Melchior.
up having any other phase? He's just kind of gone into
He's a wizard now. He's having his arcane phase.
Here you go, Melchior.
Oh man, I guess it'd be like, how weird did they want to get? Like, because you can go. Like, I really did like John's mention of Strangers in Paradise, because like Terry Moore has also a notable talent with just character development that I think is really important. And so people who enjoyed Sandman and the character development there might enjoy Terry Moore for a more realistic approach. But if they want to get weird, like some Morrison or Peter Milligan shit, like I like to throw people Peter Milligan because it's usually short, contained stories that are like 4 to 6, 8 issues. He doesn't do very large things, and they're super weird. And so you don't have to get as involved as a Grant Morrison book with a Peter Milligan book, and you get kind of just some weird shit. But I would also recommend like The Unwritten, which is also a Vertigo book, which kind of hits a lot of similar points as Sandman, and I really fucking love The Unwritten. Actually, I think it's and for a lot of the reasons I like Sandman, like I like The Unwritten, so that would be one. And then Hellboy, because I like found it at the same time. Like Hellboy and the Max both have a similar quality of like this kind of like grungy comics, like with the looks and stuff. So like I would tell people, you know. And then like somebody mentioned Fables earlier. That's like another big sweeping, like how Sid said, sweeping and sprawling stuff that incorporates. And League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a great rec too from Sid, like for that kind of same playing on established.
Yeah, it's got that same vibe.
Fables is an investment because that's like 15 trades. I think.
I've only read
You can pretty much just pick up a Fable trade and just read it.
22 trades. Woo!
A lot. The last issue was the whole trade, right? Like I didn't get that far, but
Was
the last
it? I didn't read that much of Fables.
issue 150 or something. It was just an entire trade. It was like,
What?
yeah, so it's ambitious.
You know, I've never read Fables before. I'm gonna have to read it now.
I've read
you'll
the
like it
first
for
8 or
sure.
9. It's cool.
Yeah, it's just like enjoyable.
So for me, the first one I have, like, I'd have questions for that person if they're asking if like they like Sandman, but the Black Hammer universe,
I was gonna say that too.
I feel if you're wanting kind of not that superhero thing, but you kind of want the emotional weight behind it, Black Hammer universe is a great place to go. Of course, Lock and Key. Sid and I are both huge fans of that.
Yeah.
Like, if you want irreverent shit, like Preacher is one of my all-time favorite comics.
Look, you made Jennifer leave. You guys keep bringing Lock and Key, and
We keep
she's
bringing
out.
up Lock and Key. She's
Like,
fucking out.
out of here.
Metropolitan, I think, is a great, especially with how media is today.
Yeah,
And Spider Jerusalem.
I was thinking with my Rex to try and lean more towards fantasy than sci-fi. You know, if someone like just read Sandman and just enjoyed Sandman. But those are good Rex. I mean,
there's a couple, like, if someone was looking for like the noir aspect, of course, like 100 Bullets is as noir as it gets. Wicked and Divine by Kieran Gillen also is another one where
book, yeah.
if you're looking for that god.
I had thought of and I forgot because I smoked weed.
follows that same formula of like
Die, like if you like role playing but you want these weird fucking literary characters showing up, there's ways to go. Even Once and Future.
I haven't read that one though.
Yeah,
That's been good. That's been good.
But that's what I was saying. That takes me back to what I was saying earlier. If it wasn't for books like Sandman, we wouldn't have all those books that you just mentioned. Die, the future, the Once and Future King. What is the name of that one?
Wicked and Divine.
Wicked and Divine. That one. That one. We wouldn't have East of West. We wouldn't have so many things that I can guarantee you that were inspired by Neil Gaiman's writing of Sandman.
Hickman and Gillen are definitely Neil Gaiman fans.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't
For
doubt.
sure.
Yeah.
East to West. Fuck, I forgot. East to West. Like, if you want mythology and everything else added into it, like, this is the representation of the fucking Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to catch up with that one. Definitely have to catch up with that one.
I would also say that if someone liked both Sandman and they liked Saga, I would definitely recommend Wicked and Divine, because the way the mythologies work, and once again going into some science fiction, going into fantasy, going into mythology, Wicked and Divine, totally.
And I like that it has a contemporary lens of like gender and sexuality as well. Like that's
and also like the literary characters. Like there's that issue where we find out that Mary Shelley was one of the gods at that point when creating Frankenstein. Like there's some awesome stuff in that book, and I think it'll like kind of tickle your history node a bit.
Yeah.
Overall, like definitely like, I mean, no duh, but Sandman is definitely like, I feel like it's a must read if you're a comic fan. Yeah. You may not like it, you may like it, but I feel like you have to experience it at least once.
I mean, I would even go so far as to saying, like, if you're a literature fan, like, if you're someone who likes to read Gaiman novels,
yeah,
like, why would you not read Sandman, which even he himself is, like, very proud of as a creation of his, you know? Yeah. And it was,
I feel like,
for sure, formative for him going on and then writing things like American Gods and Norse Mythology, where he plays with history and mythology in his own way. Like, for sure was a stepping stone for that.
I feel like if you already read Neil Gaiman, chances are you already read at least one trade of Sandman.
If it wasn't what got you into it.
So.
I hope you're right about that.
I'd hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like at this point, if you have ever read Gaiman, if you like Gaiman's writing, at this point, you should have already read some some Sandman, even if it's just one trade. Even if you haven't had the chance to read the other trades, it's just one. At this point, if you are a Gaiman fan, you should have already read
And what I
Sandman.
like about Sandman is it reads like Smoke and Mirror, like his collection of short stories, Smoke and Mirrors.
Yes.
Like, and I like how he throws some
Yes,
kind
I
of
love that book.
vibes into the Sandman. How he tells these little short vignettes about
My-
like about the cat. Come on, like the shit where
Yeah.
the cat playing with the human. Oh man, that was like
my
one of my
favorite story in that Smoke and Mirrors book is the Nicholas Wasp poem.
Yeah.
It's a story of Santa. That one's the one that got me in that book. I was like, oh damn.
Is this show ever happening?
I don't know. I hope so.
I
That'll
keep
be a
hearing
good
it.
show.
Like, if it's not Guillermo del Toro directing it, I don't know if I really want it because I feel like he'd be the perfect guy.
I think so too. But that's like directing short stories.
I don't know, man.
Tell
He
in the
did
dark.
it, and I wasn't like totally thrilled on that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I can't tell.
We are at the hour and a half mark. So I want to kind of start wrapping up because I know John's got to get ready for his next show that he's doing fairly soon.
So popular.
Wow.
He has over 1,000 subscribers, so you get popular when you have over 1,000. We're only about
That is
290.
true.
But
I have 12 subscribers on my YouTube.
I want to thank everybody who came on the panel today. I really appreciate it. Jennifer, happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Happy
Thank
birthday, Jennifer. When is it?
Appreciate that.
Is it
Thank you.
today?
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow.
21 years old?
20. I'm 32, so I'm pretty much just as old as Sandman is. Actually, it came out in
Oh.
'88 as well.
Oh, you summer
So-
child.
Perfect.
Look at
I
you.
know. Dirty 32.
Dirty 32. I said that on my 41, dirty 41.
So there is no Dune over this week, so that
No
it's
Dune.
not happening. No, we're gonna finish the book the week after. So you got like 600 pages to read, Gambit, if you want to join us.
You can do it. You can do
At this
it.
point, I believe in myself.
I believe in you enough for the both of us.
I really want to thank everybody for coming and joining us tonight, and of course our panel. Jennifer did not get Neil Gaiman on.
Sorry.
Next time.
Sorry.
We tried. I called him,
Yeah.
but
He's holding
He's
out for the
busy.
volume 2 chat.
Yeah.
But that's all right. Now you're hooked on Steve Orlando's tiny thirst trap picks.
Oh,
After
shit.
being on the show.
what did I miss?
It's not a
she started following him on social media, and she's like, he's like a tiny little thirst trap. And I'm like, all right, well, this is part of the clip I'm cutting and tagging him in.
Mhm.
I mean,
Keep it up, Steve.
He did really get that Midnighter Grayson ass fixation going after it was introduced.
I mean, doing the
didn't
Lord's
you?
work, truly.
I know it's your brand, Sid. Just like
Yeah.
just like Cinea's is himbos. Of course, as always, check out John's comics on his channel. Jennifer is a huge fan of his Saturday shows with his daughters. She will bring it up every Saturday we do the show.
Every time.
And we had to clean up when your daughters appeared in our chat where Jen is like, I have to watch my language. I have to watch my language.
I didn't know that was a possibility. I should have known that because you
Oh.
never know.
Well, both of them popped up in the chat and she's like, do not say anything.
I think my first reaction when I saw them, I was like, oh shit. And I'm like, oh shit.
I keep telling her that they know all the lyrics to Hamilton. There's no words that they don't know.
Okay.
So every week also he and No Good Comics do a issue from the X-Men Omnibus where there's a trivia game at the end and you could possibly win volume 2 of X-Men Omnibus. Gambit is a giant X-Men fan if you couldn't tell by his nickname. And also, there's your pull list on Thursdays and random other shows you show up. You're doing cinema now on Friday nights, which if I am off on a Friday night, I have to join you, especially if you're doing John Carpenter.
Yeah, we did Joel Schumacher this week because we're looking back at great people we lost this year, and man, I forgot how just amazing his career was. Joel Schumacher, man, has some amazing movies.
I will tell you, get Varangian Vigilante on with you, especially if you're doing action movies.
Yeah,
like him and Stay Puft.
I mean, I forgot Joel Schumacher wrote Car Wash. Working at the car wash, like that. Joel Schumacher wrote that.
What the fuck is that?
What you got there, Gambit?
Dude, let me show you guys before we leave. It's been sitting next to me, and I totally forgot it was there. So I went into a store this week, and I saw this for $40, and I had to get it. Yeah.
XXL Jim Lee.
Good purchase.
Dude, it's $40. Okay, this is like
well spent.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, let me get out of here. Jim Lee's my favorite comic book artist. Man, this thing is heavy. Jim Lee's my favorite comic book artist. And finding this, it's like finding a holy grail that I didn't know I was looking for. It's too big to take to the bathroom and reread this issue, so I might just use the original trade that I have.
Well, with that attitude,
right? But it's beautiful. It's like so seeing his art in that size. It's a completely different experience.
But now you've got
Like
a mattress
IMAX.
for a small child.
Exactly.
John, I've got to ask you, since you've been doing the Omnibus X-Men, Dave Cockrum or John Byrne?
Oh no.
I don't know that I could pick. I mean, honestly, I forgot how good Dave Cockrum's art is. It is
He
incredible.
gets shit on a lot. Like, he literally gets shit on a lot as an ex-artist.
I don't get it because I'm looking back through this stuff, and some of those panels are like I would frame that and put it up.
If you ever read the Secret History of Marvel Comics and want to read some real shitty John Byrne stuff, there is tons in there. Him burning an effigy of Jim Shooter in his backyard. There's also basically the guy alluding to that Mark Grunwald died because of Rob Liefeld's Captain America.
Oh my god!
He died of a heart attack the week after.
Oh, that one picture with the chest?
Yes.
Oh man, I mean, I wouldn't directly blame Rob Liefeld for that, but
Oh, he put it right out there. It was just like, that might be a little too far. Like,
it's like, damn, that's rough.
Damn.
So you can find us on the Dune over the week after next. It's Wednesday at 5 or 5:30. We'll let you know. We're doing a drinking episode on Thanksgiving night because I have no family left and Jen is not near her family.
Dude.
We're your family now.
That's
At
why
what
we're
time are
doing
we
a
going to
stream.
do this? At what time are we going to do this?
You're going to be drinking on it?
Yes.
Drinking, I'm going to be,
Because we
I'm probably
usually
going to be
never
inebriated
drink.
in different ways.
Is it like a
Yeah.
drinking game?
No,
It is
I
now.
think, I don't know.
Yeah, yes, no, it is now.
yes.
Yeah.
No, it is now.
Yes,
It is now a drinking game. It is
Jennifer's
now a
giving
drinking
away
game.
comics that she
I'll
hates.
drink with you all, but I don't drink, so I'll get really sloshed. If it's like,
Will be
You don't have to
yeah.
drink.
probably high. I have plenty of
no,
edibles, so I'll
I'll
be
get
like,
drunk. It's worth it. I'll get drunk and fight the colonizers all day.
thank you.
Where you from, Melchor?
My family's from Mexico.
Nice.
My dad came here when he was like 12.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm from Puerto Rico, so
Oh,
fuck
nice.
the colonizers.
Pequeños.
We're going to be doing that and just talking whatever. It's going to be a random episode. We may talk comics for a little bit. And
We might.
I also thought about a show that we could do called Dumb Bitch Money, where it's about books we hate read.
Dumb bitch money. Yes. 100%.
Since we had a long discussion about that, I'm about to buy Scumbag #2 this week, so I didn't like issue 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're just
Do you know
giving
I
Jen's
didn't
license to just bitch about Rick Remender for a whole show.
Well, that'll be Jen.
Strange Girl, and I don't know why I bought it, and I don't know why.
I didn't read it.
Strange Girls?
They
the
told me I didn't
recommended.
read it.
I bought it all and read it, and I was like, okay.
Literally, like
The
in
Tom
the
King run
second
of
page,
Batman.
in the second page of
Versus-
Strange Girls, Rick Remender uses the R word and like does a couple other, and I was like, I can't read this. I have the omnibus, and I'm like, I can't read this.
So we're gonna get going. I know John's got to get ready for his next show,
Yes.
and again, we just keep going.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and
We'll
tune in
continue
Thursday
this.
for the drinking show. I can't promise it's not gonna like degrade real fast because we did quarantine shows and they degraded very, very fast.
It's okay. It's part of it.
So
Put a
thank you.
disclaimer.
Like, comment, share, subscribe. Go check out John's show
Put on
later.
those notification bells.
What show are you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing Dungeons and Dragons. My buddy's running D&D tonight.
Oh man. At what
I
time
just
is
saw
it?
it like, really?
It starts at 9 o'clock Eastern on White Whale Comics YouTube channel.
All right.
We'll be
I'm gonna
there.
have to
All
look
right.
that up.
Hell yeah.
We'll get you in a little bit then.
Put the link up. Put the link on the chat group so that we can
Yeah.
access it.
I have to be a branch. I'll message it to you, Gambit.
Awesome.
All right. See you guys. Take care. Thank you and enjoy your holiday. Bye-bye.
Bye.